you want.
We Are the Lucky Ones is a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization. Our mission is to document experiences from the luckiest fans while celebrating the finest fans. We accomplish our mission in several ways: writing show recaps, interviewing fans at shows, and hosting a podcast, giving fans many ways to share their stories. We are always accepting sponsorships and donations. If you are interested in contributing, please visit our website, www.wearethelukyones.org, or send us an email, watlopodcast@gmail.com. Before we get started with this episode of We Are the Lucky Ones podcast, let's give a shout out to a few of our sponsors. Thank you to Simpson Yancey Law, Letter 9, and Magic and Glory. Enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special edition episode of We Are the Lucky Ones podcast. Today we have Ted Rockwell joining us, so it's going to be more of a one-on-one interview. And before we dive in, I just wanted to express my gratitude for all the work that you've put in over the many decades. Because for those of you who don't know, Ted is behind Everyday Companion, which is what We Are the Lucky Ones uses as our main data mine source when we write our show recaps, which has been such a joy and a pleasure to write, to dive into the music, the data, the past, the first time plays, the last time played, the history of songs, lyrics that are posted sometimes only to Everyday and nowhere else, when songs were first released on radio or on studio albums. So, all the little tidbits we find, all the little facts that we post after a show are all thanks to Everyday Companion. So, Ted, thank you for being here. I'm going to let you introduce yourself and your role with Everyday Companion.
Okay. Thanks, Danny. And it's such a pleasure to be able to talk to everyone today. I'm Ted Rockwell. I have been knee-deep in Widespread Panic stuff since roughly 1992. The Everyday Companion started as a web project in 1995. It was called Panic Web back in those days. And that was before the band had a website. That's how long ago we're talking about now. I had connected with Dave Schools at a party in 1993, I think, and we exchanged email addresses, which at the time not everyone had. You had to be working at a university or something like that. And so we started up what I would say is more like a pen pal kind of relationship over the internet. Simultaneous to that, I was a heavy user of the SpreadNet online community, and had asked the founder of SpreadNet, Ben, if he knew anyone who was doing any sort of database work around, widespread panic. He said, you should look up this guy, Will Duckworth. And so Will and I started an online relationship with one another and got to know one another via email and some phone calls, and decided to go into this as a full kind of research project. I was finishing my master's degree in English, and um, basically knew that I was going to have a lot of time on my hands. And my degree was in English literature, which is a lot. Does a lot. You do a lot of research in English literature. You do a lot of writing, and I knew I was going to have all this time. And I knew that there was probably a window of about 6 months where it was going to be like, I'm going to need to have something to do. And so Will and I really got into it. And I spent, I don't even know, more than 40 hours a week. I had a full-time job, and I was working on this project more than full-time on top of that, doing all sorts of crazy stuff. I can get into that more in a bit, but that's really who I am to the project. I did a lot of deep research initially, and then became kind of the face of Everyday Companion. Over the years, I've been most closely associated with the project, whereas Many people will know what I look like if I go to a show. A lot of people don't know who Will is at all. They also don't know who Scott Holcomb is. Scott Holcomb is a data engineer who volunteered to help with the Everyday Companion on a temporary basis in 1999 and
Wow.
has faithfully been essentially managing the database and keeping it up to date on a temporary basis for the last 6 years. He is a wonderful human being and somebody who the Panic community has a lot to thank for. He has really carried this project through many, many ups and downs and in betweens. Um, my wife has also been Lisa has also been very central to this project. So um, that's basically who I am to this project, and a
And
few of the
it's
people
a
here.
celebratory year for Everyday Companion. Do you want to maybe explain that milestone?
Yeah, yeah, was so the very first incarnation of what we were doing as a project was called Panic Web in 1995. And so the 95-96 season is an important season because then in 96 we changed our name to Everyday Companion and published not just the website, but then the first edition of the Everyday Companion book. Um, and so that's what I don't know. This is a numbers game. That's 30 years, I think, right?
Yeah,
Maybe.
while Panic's celebrating their 40th anniversary tour next year, you'll be celebrating your 30th.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a long time to be around a project. Um, we were really blessed early on to have access to a lot of people who were on the crew and peripheral to the band because of my connection to Dave via email. He connected us to their unofficial archivist, Horace Moore, to Gary Vereen, who became a dear friend, to other member. I mean, there's a ton of people then. We just kind of fell in very easily with crew and family and all sorts of stuff. So we've been very very lucky to have all those connections early on because we were able to kind of pull off some impossible stuff with this project. Maybe I can get into that in a little bit, but it's kind of amazing how much information we've been able to garner from times and era where there aren't any recordings, there's no video, there's no anything written down practically except in maybe one case. So yeah, it's been
Yeah, I
a
think
fun.
modern day or younger fans such as myself who kind of joined in during the Jimmy era, there's always been every day. There's always been
Right.
online source doing live set list postings. And so there really has always been the internet. And so I think to think of what it was like to be a fan, to have that fan experience before the internet existed, when people were writing down set lists in notebooks and exchanging them on the lot and exchanging tapes and things like that. So maybe if you want to share the earlier stages of Everyday Companion, like how did you collect your data and get it
Yeah.
up there?
So there was a an initial file that we had found of I don't know roughly I don't maybe 55 or 60 set lists. And then I went through all the tapes I had. I was quite a tape trader. I had a lot of audio tapes. I've got a few here I could show you if people are into that. I don't know. Um, yeah, we also sold, Lisa and I designed and sold custom tape covers, among other things, t-shirts as well, to pay the rent and that kind of thing. And I would just listen to the tapes and kind of go, okay, well, this show isn't in the database yet. And so I'd listen to that. We would also, early on, we were taking, any information people would give us. And so we would get letters with people writing us a bunch of stuff. The first edition came out with whatever it was that I had on tape, along with some other contributions as well. And then after the first book published, people like family of the band in particular, people who are in the crew and other people who are really proud of this band in that particular moment. 96 was like such chef's kiss kind of year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Super proud of them and like this is an amazing thing. we had people coming out of the woodwork. And so one of the guys who we got connected with was this guy named Dave Bradall, who hung out with the band a bunch. He was just a fan, really, but he did a lot of video recording. And he was fairly good friends with a guy named Larry Aquaviva, who was their very first, like, or one of their first crew members. And he traveled with them all over the place in the years, I think between 89 and 92, something like that. And he had this peculiar habit of writing down everything that he did, and including his own code for the set lists that the band would play. So he had his own names for the songs. That he wasn't necessarily using the same name as the band, and he obsessively wrote down everything. So Dave Bradell flew down to Austin, I think, where Larry was living at the time, and they drove around Austin with a little um, recorder, cassette recorder. Like they would just record their own voices, and they would go through those books, and they created what they would call a decoder ring, a Larry code decoder ring for all the songs. And so we have several hundred set lists that would otherwise never exist because there's no record of them anywhere. There's no recording of them. There's no, in some many cases, there's no like newspaper clippings that they played in that town. But Larry wrote down this stuff. And so we have the set list, we have where they played, all sorts of stuff.
And then the translator code.
Well, that was a thing. I ended up having to like sit down and figure out like Dave did a pretty good job of trying to translate because they had it on the fly, right? He had this little cheat sheet. Like pigeons was a hog's eternity, pig eons, hog's eternity, things like that. Stormwatch is disco. Like all, yeah, total like complete.
Doesn't even compute.
And so we have all of this stuff that a lot of people will be like, well, how do you know what it was? We're like, because this guy, right? Because we have this written record. If that hadn't happened, we wouldn't know. We wouldn't have records for, a lot of the, like, I think it's 88, 89, 90, 91. That stuff there wouldn't have been any record for whatsoever.
Yeah, I've noticed every once in a while you'll get the question mark on the date, but that's usually like 85, 86, 87 when they were really just starting out.
Yeah, I mean there's tapes that exist out there, and so there'll be recordings that you're like, okay, well, what the hell is that? And there's no way to really know. And
Yeah.
because of the project, we've been able to eliminate a lot of them, but there's still a few that remain, right? You can use the data to kind of figure out like, well, they played this song and then this song and this song, and then triangulate that. That was the origin of the everyday or the every time played was we were copying Deadbase, which is the Grateful Dead's kind of famous, database driven publication for their set lists. But the every time played became, and it's one of the reasons that it's on the set list for every show, is we were using that very actively as a way of doing research and figuring out, okay, this tape that is not labeled, what the hell is this thing? We get a lot of questions on the website. People will be like, okay, so I have this show and it da 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 da. They'll say this, and we'll be able to triangulate and go, yeah, yeah, that's that show. It's just
I love the every time
yeah.
played stat. We actually, WATLO Podcast on Instagram recently celebrated Waker turning 100.
Hmm.
Things like that that you would just never know otherwise. So,
Yeah. Well, and that's probably a fairly accurate stat because we have all of those
right.
set lists. Some of these where it's like, there are definitely missing shows, if not like weeks and weeks and weeks of missing shows, that we'll probably never know. They'll probably never surface, right? So things like that was the very first time they played Chilly Water. Well, who knows, right?
Right.
It could have been another night. Who knows?
Right. Who's updating the website now and how often does that happen? After a show, how quickly are you going in and adding that data?
So, as quickly as we can, but which
As
is not.
volunteers?
Yeah, I mean this is a volunteer effort. No one's ever gotten paid for anything. It is definitely a Web 2.0 kind of situation in terms of how it works. We get to it when we can get to it. We try to do it relatively quickly. We know that people want to see it as soon as we can get to it. Scott Holcomb is mainly the guy that will do it. And many times he's doing it the next morning. Sometimes it takes a few days. Will Duckworth is also helping with some things currently, and I think he's done some updating recently as well. Um, we've always taken, there was a phrase when we were first starting this project because it was pretty overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff coming at us. We're working full time, married, got things going on. There's a phrase from Grateful Dead Jerry Garcia song. It's basically all good things and all good time, and we've always had that kind of mentality. We're in a marathon, not a sprint. This is about being able to support the community with accurate information and not necessarily first there. That's never been the idea. It's always been we'll be there when you need us, and
Mm.
so that's how we kind of approach set lists in the age of instantaneous, right?
Yeah, and how has the community responded? Do you get a lot of love from the Panic fam?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, 100%. It's we've all this has always been a project for the fans by the fans, right? We've always taken the approach that we're fans first, right? And this is not a business venture. We um so as I said, I'd gotten my master's degree in English Lit, right? And when I started this project, I had no idea all the things I was going to learn. I couldn't afford to get my PhD. I really wanted to get a PhD. I couldn't afford it. I couldn't do it. And so what I found over the years is that my experience with widespread panic with this project was essentially my MBA and PhD combined. Like I learned
Hmm.
a lot about how to do things in a virtual environment. I learned a lot about people. I learned a lot about doing research projects like this, which is a very particular thing. And then I learned a lot about live music and how to interact with the all of the band and the crew and being peripheral to fame, if you will, like all sorts of stuff that happens that most people don't get access to. They don't see it firsthand. I really, really am grateful for all of those experiences. And a lot of that has to do with how welcoming the Panic community has always been. Everywhere, that we've ever gone, they've been very supportive of what we do. And um, whenever someone comes to me to thank me for the Everyday Companion or something like that, I said, well, thank you, because it really, without all of you, there would be no project.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear you talk about this as we're just starting up as a nonprofit because it's very similar. It's, 40 plus hours a week. We aren't getting paid. It's for it's for the fans. It's like creating this content for the fans, an educational opportunity for the fans. And our little catchphrase is documenting the experiences from the luckiest fans while celebrating the finest bands because it is like live music isn't live music without the fan experience. And so, as a fan first, I was wondering if you'd share maybe, when you first got involved seeing Panic and if there's like you mentioned 96, which definitely Chef Kiss, 97, double Chef Kiss for sure. But is there a particular tour or a year or a show or a song that just like stands out for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple things. I had actually seen Panic a few times before I saw them for the first time in 92, on my birthday, July 22nd, 92. I was in Chicago, and I'd seen them. Believe it or not, I don't know if I'd gotten there yet. They were opening for Little Women, Jerry Joseph's band, and it was Jerry's birthday, I think. And it was the last event ever had to happen at the Wise Fools Pub on Lincoln Avenue in Chicago. Apparently, Panic played. I don't remember it. And then They opened for Blues Traveler in October of 91 at the Riviera in Chicago. I don't we must have arrived late. I was young, you know. It's like you don't show up for the opening band and you just show up for the main event. Then they were coming through and headlining the Park West. And so it was my birthday. I'm with all my friends. Um, we go down front. I'm, feeling very energetic. How old am I? I'm 22, 22. And, we have a huge time. The Park West is a really fun venue because you're right on top of the band. And it's like almost like an old like cocktail lounge with a stage in a way. It feels very like you're in the 20s, vaudeville-ish. I don't know. It's a fun place to go. And I was very familiar with their music because I had the Landslide Records version of Space Wrangler. That's all that had really come out at that point, I think. And uh, or that's all I could afford. I don't think Mom's Kitchen was out, was it? I don't think so. Maybe it was. I just didn't have it because I couldn't afford it. I got the Landslide Records CD at Rose Records on Wabash in Chicago in the $1 cutout bin. And so that's how I know I have that, or I had that. They turn the corner out of like take it's like this show starts with Weight of the World and to take out Port Song makes sense to me, and then they go into Stop Go. And I ended up just having this kind of, I don't know, this real feeling that I was seeing something that meant a lot. And the show then became a much bigger thing. I had a wonderful night. I probably turned a little bit into kind of an asshole too, though, because there were guys who like weren't dancing. Like I would see people not dancing, and I would go and dance really hard next to them to try to get them to dance, feeling very, very much like, this is a life-changing experience, and everyone should feel that too. I'm not sure if you were one of those people. I'm very sorry. But it was a great show, and it's one of those that has stuck with me because it meant so much to be with all my friends on my birthday and have this kind of, experience. I've had other experiences like that with other bands since then and before that, but this is one of the top-notch ones, right? It really, really, this became more my band than, say, like when I saw the Grateful Dead and got to see Jerry Garcia. Um, that was great, and I had a really amazing time, but that wasn't necessarily my band, right? It was like, wow, this is my band now. Like there is no one else is making history here. I can help be a part of something that's larger than myself.
I think that's one of the coolest things about Widespread Panic is, even just having seen them at the Riverside or getting ready to see them at the Cap, it's like they're playing these venues where so many of the fans. It's like we're all part of it together. And, you look around and everyone knows every word. It's very
Yeah.
rare to find that fan who, it's like a cult following or something.
Yeah, sometimes when we first started the project, there were fans that knew song titles and they knew all the lyrics. But I think until this project started up, many people, the casual fan, didn't necessarily. And I take a lot of pride in that. I think that means a lot to a community to have that kind of background information that you can rely on to find meaning and be able to um, validate the experience that you're having, right? That those things exist out there. There was a moment in 96, they played their New Year's run in Atlanta at the Fox Theater. Before that run, on the 28th of December, they play the Morton Theater for the ostensible purposes of previewing their new album. They had John Keane with them sitting in because he produced the album and then he also played several instruments on it. And it was sort of a star-studded affair in a way. I mean, as far as Athens goes, there were multiple members of REM there. And turning the corner from that event into the Fox all of these fans who had been meeting each other on Spreadnet and in various places really came together and it gelled. And you could almost feel it. Like there's something happening here, and this fan base is about to rev up. Because before that, there was not much, it was an email exchange thing. Now we're seeing each other in real life. Um, then the year of 97 happened, which was incredible. I don't even know. I'd have to, I'm not prepared. I didn't do my research. I had 57 shows that year, something like that.
Wow.
Well, another book. Um, it was a big deal. By the year's end, I had Dave sending DAT tapes to me to through Horace to duplicate and send across the country so people could select what songs would end up on the Light Fuse Getaway, right? Um, what a big year, right? And to have
Wow.
that happen, to go from there not being a website at all to there being a project that is helping be a catalytic force in how the band pulls together a live, double album. That's something.
Amazing. That's truly amazing. And I mean, Light Fuse Getaway is one of my all-time favorites, obviously. I had it on vinyl and spun it all the time, and it's one of my favorite albums to recommend to new fans who are trying to get into them because the live stuff is obviously my preference. I don't think I knew that it was like a fan.
It wasn't necessarily a fan thing. So
Okay.
what was happening is Dave had a little like D8 DAT recorder and he just stereo outed from the board. And they had all of these DAT tapes and I still have them here somewhere. They basically Horace I sent him, I want to say 50 DATs or something like that. And he recorded a whole bunch of them. And I took them and made a copy and sent, I think, a copy down to Will Duckworth, and he made a copy, and then it went out to the West Coast to Steve Deerwent, I think, and he made a copy. And so right off the bat, we had people all over the country within a couple of weeks who had all of those DATs. And what we started doing is listening to them to make recommendations for what songs should make the cut or what sections of show. I think at the very beginning it wasn't even like songs. It was like, is there a show? Right. And there was so much good material. I mean, 97 was like show after show of an embarrassment of riches. Like, which
Hmm.
version of the amazing song are you going to pick, right? Um, and so it wasn't necessarily that they crowdsourced it specifically with fans, but I think they were looking for some help in just vetting, just basically going through the mass amount of material that they had to figure out what could, rise to the top. They've
Yeah.
done some of that too. I mean, you've seen that in some of the live releases they've done where it's like I think Z-Man, Sam Holt, like there's multiple people they're like, oh, you should check that show out, and it ends up being an official release at some point.
Yeah. Actually, recently was listening to a show on Nugs, and I noticed at the bottom on the review there was a note from the archivist. It just said email archives@wiseforpanic.com if you have a show suggestion.
Yeah.
This is an example of one that someone just said, this would be good. Oh, I remember it was 11/1/96 in
Oh, yeah.
Milwaukee.
Yeah. That's probably me that recommended that. Um,
Yeah.
almost
But it was
guarantee.
only and I'm gonna get the terminology wrong, but there's like 4 deck and 2 deck recordings or something like that.
Four track,
Four
and
track and 2 track. And this was a 2 track recording. So the guy's little note was like, I was hesitant to put a 2 track recording up here, but it actually sounds pretty good. I thought it sounded great, but it's hilarious because another podcast guest we had talked to me about that show where everybody drove up from Chicago the night before. No one had slept. The whole audience, the whole band was all in the same outfits. I mean,
oh
you
yeah.
could hear the energy in the band, just like they were kooky.
So that show it holds a very, very special place in the experiences of the Rockwells. The night before is Halloween, right? And for the Halloween show, we went to a few of the fall 96 shows, and we were up at the Barrymore in Madison, Wisconsin. And their tour manager at the time, Dirk Stallnecker, came up to us and said, hey, Halloween next week. You guys are going, right? We're like, of course we're fucking going. Okay, so we need help. We need a stage set. So we ended up buying I something like 60 pumpkins, including two that were 100 pounds each. And we carved pumpkins in our little Chicago apartment for hours and hours. I never want to have to carve another pumpkin in my life. And it ended up being the stage set for Halloween. And it included some really cool Lisa, my wife, ended up doing one that was a black cat that she had it was just amazing. And so a few of those pumpkins made it to Milwaukee to the Majeska Theater, including that black cat, which Hauser had set right in front of his rig. What a crazy, crazy trip that was. The band was probably not happy that they had a gig that night where I don't think anyone had slept.
Yeah.
And from what I heard, to make it through the show, JoJo kind of gave a little pep talk or something along those lines and said, let's just pretend like it's Mardi Gras. Come on, let's play through. We got to pretend like it's
That's
Mardi
so
Gras.
funny you said that because schools mentions Mardi Gras.
Yes. I think he repeats JoJo's yeah.
He
And
would
that's
pep talk the crowd.
Shake, Rattle, and Roll makes it in these kind of weird sections of songs because they were just kind of out of their minds. They're just gonna we're gonna play like it's Mardi Gras and just go big.
That's funny because school said something like we're bringing Mardi Gras to the north or something. And then the Red Beans, which closed out the whole show, I mean, so much energy despite being so tired, and the hoots and the hollers and the screams from the stage. I mean, it's just fantastic.
I was such a Chicagoan at that time. I went to work. So I went to work both on Halloween and the next day. How about that? That is such a Chicagoan thing to do, by the way. And went to the show on the 31st and went to the show on the 1st.
Oh my
Um,
God.
bonkers.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, Majeska Theater. That's the beginning of the crazy Milwaukee stuff. They'd played there before, I think, for Summerfest and maybe some odd place. But the Majeska, in my opinion, I think the success of that crazy ass show led them to be like, okay, we'll go back for Summerfest next year, and Milwaukee's still a place for us.
Yeah. Well, we're really lucky it's an annual pilgrimage now.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, is there I just like I want to share with you that when I'm at shows and there's a little argument or when is the last time they played this or whatever, it feels like so many fans are pulling up every day. And I don't know if that's something that you guys track, like how many views or how many visits, but it feels like it's just the absolute go-to source for anyone who knows.
Yeah, it's we get real traffic. We've seen the ups and downs of it too. But yeah, I we do track it. I haven't looked in a while. It doesn't really matter.
No, but I was wondering if you saw like an uptick during a show or like on a
Oh
show
yeah,
weekend and yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, no, there are times, of the year and well as like during certain runs. The Red Rocks run, I think, and the New Year's also end up being, really, really big in terms of traffic, but we've never done that. That part of the game can be a little funky, like chasing
Yes.
numbers or
Yeah.
something. This is
Well, and
the
I just learned about the Raps Teases Jams page. So I wasn't sure
yeah.
if there's like a page or a tip or a trick or something that you're extra proud of or would want to share with the masses.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think what most people need to understand is that this was built when, UX was what you see here. Like your navigation's on the left and away you go, right? That's
Hmm.
basically it. So, there's a few things. I think, the Raps, Teases, Jams, there's a link on the left-hand side for that. That's pretty cool. And it allows you to kind of look at the various stuff that the band have done that don't necessarily have it's not considered a full um, song or whatever, right? Can you zoom in on that? Are you able to like
I think
make it
so.
bigger? Yeah. This is, one of the weaknesses of there you go. The current design is like it just kind of pops up like that. So you
Hmm.
can all sorts of stuff here. Like if you scroll let's see. Um, Yeah,
W-
Amazing
w-
Grace for a while. That's great.
Yeah, one of the things we pulled up was that the room at the top, I'm gonna go really fast. Hopefully this doesn't make
Yeah.
people dizzy. But the room at the top jam was actually done 3 times in the middle of Four Cornered Room and then played in its entirety at St. Augie 2024 and then never wrapped or played again. So it felt like this room at the top wrap was almost like a premonition
Mm.
or something. And that was kind of something cool we found. But
You know, let's do scroll down to Time is Free because this is a really interesting one. Time is Free is um, a song that, that it's a relative rarity at this point, but it's, a song people are familiar with. But they played it. They actually jammed it out several time or two before they actually played the song, which I think is really interesting. There's stuff like that you can find in this kind of jam rap section, raps too, because JB, we were a little more. I think early on there was a lot of weird rapping that JB would do, and you wouldn't know if it's a song or not, and so it would end up in here. And so there's stuff like that that you can look up. But other stuff on the left-hand side, maybe obviously a lot of people know about lyrics, and there's a link to lyrics on the left-hand side, chords and tab. We probably haven't been as good as we could be with lyrics. There's updates. I've got a whole file folder in my Gmail with lyrics like crazy that we need to update.
mhm.
Hasn't happened. It will eventually. Um, Song information overview on the left-hand side, or even timeline. Have you ever been to the timeline?
Yeah, I have, yeah. I'm sure
Oh,
most people, I've
interesting.
actually read this, but
Yeah, there's a lot in here, and it really runs through 2000, but it gives everyone kind of that first 15 years of the band kind of overview, which is really interesting. Um, the song information index is really crazy because it basically puts into a chart all of the songs, and so you can see if it's got where its ETP is, where its lyrics are, what chords it has, what its history would be. History ends up being quite literally just a history of recordings that exist for that song.
which is so helpful because I mean, I'm surprised even when some of these songs are actually covers. And of
Yeah,
course we have you know, yeah, it's amazing. I actually, oh, it was Gimme because it was actually Gary Vereen's birthday this Saturday night of Milwaukee. And
right.
so during Gimme, JB changed the name to Larry or Gary instead of
There you
Larry.
go.
And I was looking that up, and th this is one that I actually, I'm glad I remembered because um, it has some storytelling too here
Oh yeah.
about this like song history about Hauser's wife and Tuesday, and it was actually Give Me Your Hand There, Johnny, but JB didn't want to say his own name. And so I researched this song. I forget when they played it earlier in 2025, but um knowing this, like reading this on your site and then knowing this and then hearing them played in Milwaukee had a very different meaning for me. And it was like a totally different experience seeing this song because I read this little note from Kevin Watson. So it's amazing the impact the like learning about the songs and the lyrics and the history have on the actual experience in the show.
Yeah, so couple of big things there. One, Kevin Watson was one of the first people to be pulling together set lists way back in the 1993, 94 era. He was, I think, partially responsible for one of the first set list files that we had. Gimme Lift There Larry refers to Larry Aquaviva, who I was talking about before earlier in the podcast. Um, and Gary, they played Jamais Vu, right? That song was partially, maybe very majorly inspired by JB's experiences in mourning Gary's passing. Um, and I can't, I'm not going to go too deep into that, but he had had some dreams with Gary in it. And, um, Gary was a very good man, and he was such a positive force on people. Um, but near the end of his life, he was having some memory problems, and he was having some problems remembering things. And that's part of what's going on in that Jamais Vu song, right? Is, you know, everyone's familiar with the idea of deja vu. But jamais vu is a different one, which is not quite as pleasant as say deja vu. Um, so it means a lot to know that, you know, he's still carrying with them in that way. Everyone, they've experienced a lot of loss as a band, and um, it's easy to kind of think that maybe they're just calloused on the outside or something. And it's clear that, you know, they wear their scars proudly, and they try to make sure that people are remembering some of these characters that have helped them along the way.
That's actually been one of my favorite things about writing the recaps is diving into some of these fallen heroes. And they actually even mentioned that in Little by Little, which is kind of like an autobiographical song, fallen heroes along the way. And every time we get to write about Vic Chestnut or Gary Vereen or even lost within the band, Mikey Hauser, Todd Nance, like it's there and it doesn't exist in a lot of other band histories. I mean, the band that Wise for Panic's mostly compared to is Fish, and that loss just isn't as present. And so it does change the meaning of the lyrics and the depth of the songs and the soul that's there. And so, yeah, it's a noteworthy thing to talk about.
You know, they've lost a few crew members, you know. One got hit on the side of the road by a car, and another, yeah, there's been a lot there. And I feel like that's also a part of the kind of ethos of, this project is just a part of a larger thing, and we're just
Hmm.
here to make sure that it's accessible for everyone. That
Yeah.
this information, most of this information has been shared by people. And at the end of the day, you know, what we're doing is kind of taking seriously our duty of making sure that that's accessible for everyone.
Well, last question for you, because I know you have to run. You mentioned kind of that it was the original way you see websites, or you mentioned like UX, I think. Are there plans to evolve the website, or are you pretty happy with the capacity it has right now? I mean, I think it's very user friendly, but
Yeah. Well, so there's a couple of things about it. Yes. So to answer your question, yes, there are. There is some stuff in the works. I'm not going to make any promises on timing, but it's it's pretty close. I mean, I think we may have something here.
all good things in all good time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you know, that's the thing. We don't one of the things that we've really tried to do, Will has really helped lead this, and I really appreciate this, making this as minimally intrusive as possible in terms of the fees that are necessary to run it. So it's not resource intensive to run the site, and that's part of what the evolution of the site will be as well. It will continue to be something that's not going to require significant money from a hosting standpoint or things like that. Development time to keep things up to date, that sort of thing. But this site, as you see it right now, essentially is an Access database, Microsoft Access. This might be something that people are not familiar with. This is one of the very first um, database programs that you possibly could have had. It is no longer supported, um, and it literally lives on a laptop. I think it's a laptop in Scott Holcomb's house, where he makes updates and then uploads files manually
Oh
via
my
like.
gosh, we need to get this man an insurance policy on this
Um,
laptop.
and so what you're hearing there is there's one point of failure, right? And that's a problem. It's been, you know, 30 years of basically skating on thin ice. Um, the main reason for the update is to try to get us to a place where we can actually then make web updates. We can actually go to a web interface, make a new set list or make an edit and publish it live and have that work. It's something currently that isn't happening. We have Will has been working hard on some stuff and it's functional. So we're at a point
That's
of
wild. So after the show, Scott basically turns the show into a file of data and then uploads it in
yeah.
his computer, and that's how all the stats are updated.
Yeah, basically there's an access like interface and he enters the set list and when once he's done with the set list, he can compile, it's more than one file, right? He can compile the files. So there's a set list file, but then also the ETP for each of the songs needs to be updated, like all of that other background stuff. All of those files then get kind of uploaded to the site and propagated, and then it becomes live on the site from there. So it's
Amazing.
pretty, yeah, pretty man. Some people maybe and this is, several years ago now, and a lot of people are a lot younger at this point, but there was a period where I was trying to do live set list updates, and I would quite literally have a text file like on my computer, and I would just update the set list and FTP it up to like the website, and you could see like each song being added. This is before anything like that, before Panic Stream, before any of those things were occurring. And people would blow, their minds would be blown. It's like, how in the heck are you doing this? Whatever. It is what it is. I figured out how to do it for my phone for a brief minute, and it just became too much of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and especially when you're there, you want to be enjoying the show.
yeah, that's been a thing for me too. Like I said, I saw a lot of shows in '97, and it was an amazing year to be around the whole thing. It was just crazy. Went to the Fox Run at the end of the year, and that was really cool because they ended up doing like a history lesson set as a part of it, which perhaps if I were in the right mindset, I could have taken as a real like, hey, attaboy, Ted, you're onto something. Like maybe they're paying attention. Who knows? Maybe not. It could have just been them too. But I got to the end of that run, and someone asked me how the run was, and I was like, "Yeah, it was okay." And it took a while to realize this. A friend of mine was like, "What are you talking about? That the run was amazing. What's your problem?" And I realized that I was in my head, not living in the moment and really chasing things. And so frequently people will like at the Red Rocks run, someone will be like, "So what are you hoping to hear?" I'm like, "I'm hoping to hear the band play," right?
Yeah.
My expectations are just down here. I'm not expecting anything out of anyone. I'm here for the experience. Bring it on. Let's have fun together, right?
Yeah. Okay, last question. Every time played, is that truly every time the song was played? Because if a song is used as what we call at WATLO HQ sandwich bread, so driving song or proving
Yeah.
ground or Surprise Valley, does that count as two times played in that one show?
I believe it is. If you look at every time, let's look at something like, I'm going to look at Chilly Water really quick because I'm pretty sure it ends up getting counted the two times, right? Um,
Because that's something I've been manually counting, like Proving Ground. I just did a statistic of how many times Proving Ground is used as sandwich bread, and it was
you
like a
know,
manual.
I don't know how to answer this question, and frankly, I'm not entirely sure that my answer is correct. I would want to follow up with my buddy Scott because and or Will. I mean, I think either one of them probably be able to answer this a little better than I could. I I do believe that it gets counted the two times because wait, let's see here. I'm looking at what the column I'm looking at is the number. So date, and then there's a numerical sign, number. That's the number of shows since it was last played. All right.
Right.
So if you look at that and you look at a sandwich, let's look at a famous sandwich. There's 2796. Oh, no, it doesn't count it twice because what he's done, and I can tell by the how he's done it, it's counting the number of shows since it was last played the same for both the beginning, the bread, and then the heel of the bread, or whatever you want to
Yeah,
say, right?
that's exactly what we
So
call it.
Right. So basically, I think we accommodated that when we first did the stats. It only counts at once.
Great to know. Well, thank you. Is there anything else you want to share with Panic Nation? Live music friends?
We really appreciate all of the support over the years. And um, and for forgiving trespasses. I mean, I'm just a human being, and there are times when I haven't necessarily, done the thing that needed to happen, or done it in the way that people may agree with. So I appreciate the forgiveness as well. There will probably come a time, people ask me all the time, like, how can we help with Everyday Companion? It's usually people talking monetarily. And I'll just say out loud that we don't like to take money unless we know exactly what we're going to be doing with it. We will probably be asking for money at some point here in the near future, to help make sure that we have a solid footing, to make sure that every day companion can exist for another 30 years. But we're not going to do that until we have something to show for our work and be able to demonstrate to the community that we are still of value and that we still are worthwhile of their precious donations. So
Well, I think you have a lot to show, all the work you've done. So, and we are so, so grateful for you and for this database and for all the information we can dig into and share that with the world. So, thank you.
you're welcome. And thanks for having me on the show, Danny. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank
Look with
you.
everything.
This has been a production of We Are the Lucky Ones, a 501c3 nonprofit organization built by fans and built for fans. Keep on keeping on, take care of each other out there, and we'll see you at the show.